So just a very brief historical perspective to link the topics of today's presentations to the past. And in particular, I want to highlight a number of things. Number one is the building you're sitting in was built in 1974, and while I'm not going to go through all the floor assignments, if you take a careful look, this building has withstood years of change and still holds up as a great source of creativity, and it's almost as old as the school. So this is the Annenberg building. I want to highlight three giants in the history of the school, two of whom I knew, one very well, Hans Popper, Irving Selikoff, as well as Edwin Kilbourne. Each in their own way, they made seminal contributions, not just to the history of the school, but to the history of their fields and science in general. Starting with Hans Popper, he was the first dean. He was the acting dean, initially recruited here in 1957. He had been a major driving force for the creation of the school, and he, as I said, was acting dean in 1963. He then became the first dean for academic affairs. It was he who proposed that Mount Sinai create an academic center comprised of a hospital, graduate school, and in that case, also the Institute for Environmental Medicine, recognizing the great strengths we had here with Irving Selikoff and others. He had a fundamental role in defining the curriculum, and he recruited George James as the first permanent dean. I know him better as the father of modern hepatology. I think mine is the last generation who knew him personally. He was incredible. He was like the Picasso of liver disease. He had many phases in which he made seminal discoveries throughout. He was a man of extraordinary energy and curiosity. He defined fundamental principles of liver organization and studies across the spectrum of what comprised liver disease in his day. And he was also the first of 6 Mount Sinai faculty to be president of the American Association for the Study of Liver Diseases. I'm proud to say I was the last one. I was number 6, and that was 10 years ago. This is Hans in his office looking at slides. This is an honorary endowed chair with Fenton Schaffner and Gustav Levy on the right. Fenton was the founding division chief of liver disease here, worked closely as the clinician who accompanied Hans, who was a pathologist. And this was Hans receiving an honorary degree in 1979, which by coincidence was at my graduation, so I was sitting in the audience. And that's Dean Tom Chalmers, who was bestowing that degree on Dr. Popper. I like this quote from Dr. Popper: "Experience is a major asset that augments with time. We should therefore not waste time. That's the most precious commodity we have." And if you knew him, you knew that he lived this. There was never a dull moment. He was always running, doing things, exploring, interacting, quizzing others, and learning. Next was Irving Selikoff, who came to Mount Sinai initially in 1947. He created the Mount Sinai Environmental Science Laboratory in 1961. And in short, he was a pioneer in a number of ways. The one for which he's best known is in establishing a link between asbestos and a 50-fold risk of lung cancer. And of course, that transformed our world, certainly building regulations. And he also defined health hazards of a number of other molecules or chemicals, and also established the efficacy before that of isoniazid in TB for TB and through clinical trials. And for his work, he was awarded the Lasker Prize in 1955. Last is Dr. Edwin Kilbourne, who, when I was a student here in the late 70s, was the first professor and chairman of the Department of Microbiology. He was instrumental in establishing curricula. He also was instrumental in establishing a world-class faculty, and my co-chair, I'm honored to share this podium with Peter Palese, was one of Dr. Kilbourne's recruits and was the first to map the influenza virus genome. Dr. Kilbourne was also a Jacobi Medallion recipient. His work, like Dr. Palese's after him, was pioneering in developing technologies for influenza vaccines. He engineered a hybrid reassortment virus that grew well in embryonated eggs and was suitable for vaccination. That was a major breakthrough. He was highly recognized for his work. And he was elected to the National Academy of Sciences and multiple other honors and lectureships. So through these three men created an arc of innovation that, of course, persists today. It will be epitomized not only by our keynote speakers, but especially by our panelists that include the keynote speakers, as well as many luminaries, several luminaries from our own institution.